A sweet tooth and a twinkle. The bell above the door chimed a cheerful greeting as Arthur Abernathy shuffled inside, his cane tapping a slow rhythm against the checkered tile floor. The aroma of warm spices and baking fruit washed over him, a comforting wave that momentarily eased the persistent ache in his joints. Rows of golden pies sat cooling on wire racks, their flaky crusts glistening under the warm bakery lights. Mr. Peterson's bakery was a feast for the eyes as well as the nose. Arthur paused, his gaze drawn to a particularly plump apple pie. The scent of cinnamon and caramelized sugar conjured a vivid memory of his late wife, Clara, humming softly as she rolled out dough in their kitchen. Her apple pies were legendary, each slice a testament to her love and patience. A sweet pang of longing resonated within him. He edged closer, his fingers twitching with a desire to trace the delicate lattice work on the crust. The apples, he could see, were sliced thin and layered perfectly, promising a burst of tartness that would balance the sweetness. A genuine smile stretched across his face, crinkling the corners of his eyes. They sparkled, reflecting the warmth of the bakery and the memory of Clara's kitchen. "That's our prize-winning apple pie, sir," Mr. Peterson announced, startling Arthur. He bustled from behind the counter, wiping his flour-dusted hands on his apron. "Fresh out of the oven this morning. Got a blue ribbon at the county fair last year." Arthur nodded, his gaze still fixed on the pie. "Reminds me of my Clara's," he murmured, almost to himself. "Best apple pie in the whole world." Mr. Peterson, ever the salesman, seized the opportunity. "Well, you won't find a better one anywhere else in town, I guarantee it. Slice of apple pie and a coffee. On the house, for a first-time customer." Arthur blinked, a flicker of confusion crossing his face. Had he been here before? He couldn't quite recall. That's very kind of you," he stammered, but before he could fully accept, a shrill voice cut through the air. "Mr. Peterson. My croissants are burning." Mr. Peterson's face crumpled in dismay. "Oh, heavens to Betsy." He threw Arthur a distracted glance. "Excuse me, sir. Just a moment." He scurried back behind the counter, muttering apologies to a demanding woman with tightly permed hair and a shopping basket overflowing with groceries. Arthur was left standing near the apple pie, his moment of clarity fading like morning mist. He reached out, his fingertips brushing the edge of the pie plate. The warmth was comforting. He wondered if Clara would have liked this bakery. She always appreciated a good apple pie. A young mother with a stroller jostled him slightly as she navigated the crowded aisle. "Excuse me," she said, her voice sharp with impatience. Arthur stumbled back, his cane slipping on the tile. He clutched at a nearby table to steady himself. The movement sent a small vase of plastic flowers teetering, nearly toppling onto the floor. Mr. Peterson, already flustered by the burning croissants and the demanding customer, shot Arthur a look of pure exasperation. "Sir, please be careful. Those are for display." Arthur mumbled an apology, his cheeks flushing. He felt a familiar wave of disorientation wash over him. Where was he, exactly? And what was he doing here? The bakery, the pies, the faces, they all seemed strangely unfamiliar, like fragments of a dream he couldn't quite grasp. The apple pie, however, remained a beacon. Lost in thought, Arthur reached out once more to touch the apple pie. The missing pie. The bell above the bakery door jingled, announcing Mrs. Gable's arrival. Mr. Peterson, wiping flour from his hands, beamed. "Mrs. Gable. The usual blueberry muffin, I presume. Fresh out of the oven just now." "You know me too well, Mr. Peterson," she chuckled, fishing in her purse. "Though, perhaps today I'll try something different. What's that aroma? Is that apple pie?" "Indeed it is. My grandmother's recipe, a true autumn classic." Mr. Peterson gestured towards the cooling rack. "Just came out this morning. You simply must try a slice." He turned to grab a knife, the movement smooth and practiced. But as he reached for the rack, his smile faltered. He blinked. He counted the pies. 1, 2, 3. There should have been 4. A cold dread bloomed in his stomach. He knew exactly how many pies he'd baked that morning. 4 golden brown masterpieces, each a testament to his grandmother's legacy. Now, one was gone. "Everything all right, Mr. Peterson?" Mrs. Gable asked, her voice laced with concern. "Just one moment, Mrs. Gable," he stammered, his eyes darting around the bakery. Had he moved it? Placed it somewhere else in a moment of distraction? He checked the back counter, the shelves, even the small table near the window where he sometimes enjoyed a quiet cup of coffee. Nothing. His gaze landed on the empty space on the cooling rack, the faint outline of a pie plate still visible. His mind raced. Who could have taken it? And when? Then, a memory surfaced. A tall, thin figure lingering near the pies earlier that morning. Mr. Abernathy. He'd been humming softly, hands clasped behind his back, his gaze seemingly fixed on the apple pies. Mr. Peterson had assumed he was simply admiring them. Now. A wave of indignation washed over him. Mr. Abernathy. The retired librarian. The quiet, unassuming man who always bought a day-old croissant on Wednesdays. He, Mr. Peterson, had even offered him a senior discount. The audacity. The sheer gall. "Mrs. Gable," he said, his voice trembling slightly, "I'm terribly sorry, but I need to attend to something. Your muffin is on the house today." He practically shoved the muffin into her hands. But, Mr. Peterson, he didn't hear her. He was already dialing the police. "Yes, hello. I'd like to report a theft. A pie. An apple pie. Gone. Stolen from my bakery. Peterson's Pies, on Elm Street. Yes, it's urgent. I know who did it. Mr. Abernathy. Yes, Abernathy. He lives just down the street. Please, you need to catch him before he eats the evidence." He slammed the phone down, chest heaving. The image of Mr. Abernathy, gleefully devouring his grandmother's pie, fueled his anger. Justice would be served. Apple pie justice. Officer Miller arrives. The call crackled over the radio, possible theft, Peterson's Bakery, Elm Street. Handle with discretion. Officer Miller gripped the steering wheel a little tighter, his knuckles white. Elm Street. That was Prime Patrol territory, the heart of his designated beat. This was it, a real crime, not just a barking dog complaint or a parking ticket. He switched on the siren, the wail slicing through the quiet afternoon, a little louder, perhaps, than necessary. He wanted to be there, to be seen, to be the officer who kept Elm Street safe. He pulled up outside Peterson's, tires squealing slightly, a plume of exhaust momentarily obscuring the window display of sugar cookies. Mr. Peterson, a man whose face always seemed to be dusted with flour even when he wasn't baking, stood outside, arms waving like a scarecrow in a hurricane. "Officer. Thank heavens you're here. He's in there. He stole a pie." Peterson's voice was shrill, bordering on frantic. Miller straightened his uniform, adjusted his belt, and took a deep breath. "All right, Mr. Peterson, calm down. Tell me exactly what happened." Peterson sputtered, pointing a trembling finger towards the bakery's interior. "That man. Abernathy. Arthur Abernathy. He came in, looked around, and then just grabbed an apple pie and tried to walk out. I saw him." Miller stepped inside, the warm, yeasty scent of baking bread doing little to calm his nerves. He scanned the room, his hand instinctively resting on the butt of his service weapon. Near the counter, an elderly man stood, his shoulders slumped, his eyes unfocused. He was holding a pie tin, empty. "Sir," Miller said, his voice firm but controlled. "I'm Officer Miller. Mr. Peterson here has accused you of theft. Can you explain what's going on? Arthur Abernathy blinked, his gaze slowly drifting from the empty pie tin to Miller's face. He seemed confused, lost. Clara? Is that you, dear? Did you want a slice? His voice was raspy, a dry leaf skittering across pavement. Miller lowered his hand slightly, a flicker of doubt crossing his face. The man looked frail, disoriented. Hardly a hardened criminal. But Peterson's accusation was clear, and Miller couldn't just dismiss it. He had a duty to investigate. Sir, my name is Officer Miller. And this is an apple pie tin. Mr. Peterson says you took the pie. Abernathy looked down at the tin as if seeing it for the first time. A faint smile touched his lips. Apple. Clara loved apple pie. Especially on Tuesdays. He paused, his brow furrowing. But Clara's gone. The smile vanished, replaced by a profound sadness that seemed to weigh him down. Miller glanced at Peterson, who was hovering nervously in the doorway, his arms still crossed. Peterson just glared back, his flour-dusted face set in a grim line. This was going to be more complicated than he thought. The old man was clearly addled, perhaps not fully aware of his actions. But a crime was a crime. An accusation and a denial. Officer Miller approached Arthur Abernathy, the morning sun glinting off the polished badge pinned to his chest. He cleared his throat. Mr. Abernathy. Good morning. I need to ask you a few questions about a missing pie. Abernathy blinked, his brow furrowing above eyes the color of faded denim. A pie? Missing? What are you talking about, young man? He shuffled his feet on the porch, the loose boards groaning under his weight. The air smelled faintly of lilac and dust. Mrs. Henderson reported a stolen pie. A blueberry pie, specifically. Said she left it cooling on her windowsill, and it's gone now. A neighbor saw someone fitting your description walking away from her house around the time it disappeared. Miller felt a prickle of discomfort. Abernathy seemed genuinely bewildered. Still, duty called. Stolen? I wouldn't steal a thing. I haven't stolen anything in my life. Abernathy's voice trembled, a thin reed shaking in the breeze. He clutched the railing, his knuckles white. I was just admiring her roses. Lovely roses, Mrs. Henderson has. The deep crimson ones, almost black. Beautiful. Miller shifted his weight, the leather of his holster creaking softly. Sir, with all due respect, admiring roses doesn't usually involve taking baked goods. He tried to keep his tone neutral, but the accusation hung heavy in the air. A robin chirped from a nearby oak, the sound incongruously cheerful. Abernathy's face crumpled slightly. I don't understand. I swear, officer, I didn't take any pie. I haven't even had breakfast yet. Just a cup of weak tea. He gestured vaguely towards the open doorway behind him, where a sliver of a darkened hallway could be seen. Miller sighed inwardly. He hated this part of the job. Accusing an old man of petty theft felt wrong, especially one who looked so utterly lost and confused. But Mrs. Henderson was adamant, and the neighbor's testimony, however vague, couldn't be ignored. Mr. Abernathy, Miller said, his voice firm but laced with a touch of apology, I'm going to have to ask you to submit to a search. Abernathy stared at him, his mouth agape. A search? You think I'm hiding a pie? In my house? This is preposterous. He sputtered, his face flushing a mottled red. I understand your frustration, sir. But it's standard procedure. Just a quick look around to clear things up. Miller stepped closer, his hand instinctively resting on the butt of his sidearm. The air crackled with unspoken tension. The robin, sensing the shift in mood, flew away. The photograph. Officer Miller swallowed, the fluorescent lights of the bakery glinting off his badge. He felt a knot of discomfort tightening in his stomach. Patting down an elderly man for pilfered pie felt wrong, especially after seeing the tremor in Abernathy's hands. Still, protocol was protocol. "Mr. Abernathy, for my own peace of mind, I need to do a quick search," Miller said, trying to keep his tone neutral. Abernathy just stared back, his eyes brimming with an emotion Miller couldn't quite decipher. Resignation, maybe? Or just plain bewilderment? He started with Abernathy's jacket, feeling the thin, worn fabric. Nothing in the pockets. He moved down to the man's trousers, empty. Miller felt a wave of relief wash over him. Maybe this was all a big misunderstanding. But then, he felt it. A distinct bulge under Abernathy's coat, near his chest. It wasn't the round shape of a pie, but it was definitely something. Miller's heart sank. He reached inside the coat, his fingers closing around paper. He pulled it out. It was a photograph. Crumpled and faded, the edges softened with age. Miller unfolded it carefully. A woman stared back at him, her smile radiant, her eyes sparkling with a life that seemed impossibly distant. She wore a simple dress and stood in front of what looked like a rose bush in full bloom. Miller's face flushed crimson. He'd assumed, he didn't even know what he'd assumed. Guilt gnawed at him. He held out the photograph, his hand shaking slightly. "Sir, I apologize. I didn't realize." Abernathy reached for the photograph, his fingers brushing Miller's. His touch was surprisingly firm. He clutched the picture to his chest, his knuckles white. The light caught the silver of a military ring on his pinky. "That's Martha," Abernathy said, his voice thick with emotion. "My wife. Passed on, these last 5 years. Not a day goes by." He trailed off, his gaze fixed on the woman's face. Miller felt like he'd been punched in the gut. He hadn't just accused an old man of stealing, he'd intruded on something deeply personal, something sacred. The smell of warm apple pie, which had previously been enticing, now felt cloying, suffocating. I understand, sir. I'm very sorry for your loss." Miller's words felt hollow, inadequate. He wanted to disappear, to rewind the last few minutes and pretend this never happened. But he couldn't. He was stuck here, a symbol of misplaced suspicion and unwarranted intrusion. Abernathy looked up, his eyes filled with a grief that seemed to stretch back decades. "She loved apple pie," he whispered, more to the photograph than to Miller. "Used to bake one every Sunday." He paused, a faint smile flickering across his lips. "Best darn pie you ever tasted." The accusation hung in the air, unspoken but heavy. Had Abernathy been trying to replace a memory? Was he just a lonely old man craving a taste of the past? Or was he, as the baker insisted, a thief? Miller didn't know. All he knew was that the situation had become infinitely more complicated. And a whole lot sadder. "Grandpa! Grandpa!" The bell above the bakery door jingled frantically as Lily burst inside, the scent of yeast and cinnamon hitting her like a warm hug gone wrong. Her eyes darted around the room, settling on the tableau near the counter, Officer Miller, looking flustered but determined, and her grandfather, Arthur Abernathy, his face a mask of bewildered indignation. A half-eaten apple pie sat precariously on the counter between them. "Lily, thank heavens," Grandpa Arthur exclaimed, his voice cracking with a mixture of relief and annoyance. "This young man seems to think I'm a common thief." Officer Miller, who Lily remembered seeing around town, fresh out of the academy, all earnestness and good intentions, straightened his posture. "Ma'am, I'm just trying to understand the situation. Your grandfather was attempting to leave the premises with this pie, without paying." Lily rushed to her grandfather's side, placing a reassuring hand on his arm. "Officer, I apologize for any misunderstanding. My grandpa, well, he's not always himself these days. He gets confused sometimes." She gave Arthur's arm a gentle squeeze, and he huffed, but didn't protest. "Confused? Miller echoed, skepticism etched on his face. He glanced at the pie, then back at Arthur, who was now staring intently at a rack of sourdough loaves as if they held the secrets of the universe. Yes, confused, Lily reiterated, her voice firm but laced with a plea for understanding. He loves apple pie, always has. It's one of the few things he still really remembers clearly. Sometimes, though, the memories get jumbled. He might think he already bought it, or that someone promised it to him. She turned to her grandfather, speaking slowly and clearly. "Grandpa, remember this morning? I brought you an apple pie from Mrs. Higgins at the farmer's market. The one with the lattice crust." Arthur's eyes flickered with recognition. "The lattice crust," he repeated softly, a ghost of a smile playing on his lips. Yes, that was a fine pie." Lily turned back to Officer Miller, her expression pleading. "See? He remembers. He probably just saw this one and, in his mind, it was already his. He wouldn't intentionally steal anything. He's not capable of that." She reached into her purse, pulling out her wallet. "I'm happy to pay for the pie, officer. Just to clear things up." Miller hesitated, his gaze shifting between Lily, her grandfather, and the incriminating pie. The bakery, usually bustling, had fallen silent, all eyes on them. He could feel the weight of their collective judgment, the subtle pressure to simply let it go. The aroma of baking bread, normally comforting, now felt stifling. He wished he'd stayed at the station and filled out paperwork. "Ma'am," he said finally, his voice slightly softer than before, "I appreciate your explanation. But I still have to follow procedure. I need to." He trailed off, unsure how to proceed without further embarrassing the elderly man. Lily's eyes narrowed slightly. "Procedure, officer? Or common sense? You really think my grandfather, a man who can barely remember what he had for breakfast, is some sort of criminal mastermind?" Arthur, seemingly oblivious to the tension, had wandered closer to the counter and was now poking inquisitively at a sugar cookie shaped like a star. "That's a very fine star," he declared loudly. "Reminds me of something." Lily sighed. This was going to be a long day. A Medal of Honor. Officer Miller's grip tightened on Mr. Abernathy's arm. "Sir, I need you to cooperate." The old man's eyes, clouded with confusion, darted around the bakery. A smear of blueberry pie filling clung stubbornly to his chin. As Miller leaned in, intending to repeat his demand, his gaze snagged on something inside the old man's unbuttoned coat. It was nestled against the faded fabric of his shirt, catching the dim light of the bakery, a dull gleam emanating from tarnished bronze. He squinted, trying to make out the details. A 5-pointed star, suspended from a green and blue ribbon. He released Mr. Abernathy's arm, a flicker of uncertainty crossing his face. "What's that?" he asked, his voice losing some of its earlier edge. Lily stepped forward, her expression hardening. "That's none of your business." Miller ignored her, his focus fixed on the medal. He reached out, then hesitated. "Is that a medal?" "It is," Lily snapped. "Now, are you going to let my grandfather go, or are you going to continue harassing him?" He swallowed, the knot in his stomach tightening. He felt a sudden, unwelcome heat rising in his cheeks. "What kind of medal is it?" Mr. Abernathy, seemingly oblivious to the shift in the officer's demeanor, mumbled something about needing to find his glasses. Lily sighed, her shoulders slumping slightly. The fight seemed to drain out of her. "It's a Medal of Honor." The words hung in the air, silencing the clatter of pans from the back of the bakery. Miller's eyes widened. He straightened, unconsciously adopting a more respectful posture. "A Medal of Honor? Are you sure?" He couldn't reconcile the disheveled, confused old man in front of him with the image he held of a war hero. Lily met his gaze, her own unwavering. "I am absolutely sure, officer. It was awarded to my grandfather for his actions in the war." She paused, a hint of pride entering her voice. He single-handedly held off an enemy advance, allowing his unit to retreat to safety. He was wounded, captured, and spent months as a prisoner of war. Miller's face flushed crimson. He looked from the medal to Mr. Abernathy, then back again. The reality of the situation crashed down on him. He'd been so quick to judge, so eager to enforce the law, that he'd nearly arrested a national hero for a piece of pie. He cleared his throat, the sound amplified in the sudden quiet. "Sir," he said, addressing Mr. Abernathy directly, his voice thick with remorse. I apologize. I wasn't aware." He trailed off, searching for the right words, but finding none. The weight of his mistake pressed down on him, heavier than any regulation he'd ever been forced to memorize. The smell of yeast and sugar, once comforting, now felt suffocating. Lily's expression softened slightly, though her eyes still held a hint of suspicion. "He doesn't always remember things clearly," she explained, gesturing towards her grandfather. "The war, it took a toll on him." Mr. Abernathy blinked, his gaze finally focusing on Miller. He offered a weak, confused smile. Did I get the blueberry? Apologies and apple pie." The heat from the ovens radiated outwards, a tangible wave that washed over Lily as she spoke. "He's not stealing anything, officer. My grandfather. He's a Medal of Honor recipient. He earned it in the Pacific. He doesn't even remember why he came in here half the time." Mr. Peterson, who had been furiously wiping flour from his hands, froze mid-swipe. The sound of Lily's voice, sharp and clear above the gentle hum of the bakery, had cut through his agitation like a warm knife through butter. He'd only caught the last few words, but they were enough. Enough to make the blood drain from his face, leaving it the color of unbaked dough. He crept forward, the linoleum squeaking under his weight. He could see Mr. Abernathy standing ramrod straight, a faint tremor in his hands, and Officer Miller, looking increasingly bewildered. Lily stood between them, a small but formidable shield. "Medal of Honor?" Mr. Peterson whispered, his voice hoarse. He edged closer, until he could clearly see Lily's determined expression. He saw the way she held her grandfather's arm, a gesture of both support and protection. And then he saw the ribbon bar pinned to Mr. Abernathy's worn tweed jacket. His bravado deflated like a punctured balloon. Shame blossomed in his chest, hot and prickly. He rushed forward, almost tripping over a stack of pie boxes. "Mr. Abernathy. Officer, I am so sorry. I didn't. I had no idea." He wrung his flour-dusted hands. "I've been robbed blind lately, you see. Just jumpy. Please, forgive me." He looked at Lily, his eyes pleading. "I shouldn't have accused you." Officer Miller, his own face flushed with a mixture of embarrassment and understanding, stammered, "Sir, it's all right. I understand." But his voice lacked conviction. He'd been so quick to judge, so eager to prove himself. Now, the weight of his mistake pressed down on him. Mr. Peterson turned back to Mr. Abernathy, his apology heartfelt. "Please, sir. Anything. Anything at all. A pie. A cake. On the house. Anything to make amends." Mr. Abernathy, still a little dazed, blinked slowly. "Abernathy," he mumbled, more to himself than anyone else. Officer Miller, feeling a need to somehow right his own wrong, stepped forward. "Actually," he said, reaching for his wallet, "I'd like to buy you both an apple pie. My treat. As a gesture of respect." He swallowed hard. "And an apology." The fluorescent lights of the bakery seemed to amplify his discomfort. Lily looked from Officer Miller to her grandfather, then back again. A small smile played on her lips. "That's very kind of you, officer. We would appreciate that very much." The aroma of baking apples hung heavy in the air, suddenly more comforting than accusatory. A story and a lesson. A network of fine lines deepened around Mr. Abernathy's eyes as a true smile surfaced. Apple pie. Well now, that's mighty kind of you, officer. He accepted the pie with both hands, their grip surprisingly firm for a man of his years. The fragrance, a heady blend of spice and baked fruit, permeated the cozy space. Lily, quiet until now, advanced a step. Grandpa just adores Mrs. Higgins' pies. Says they take him back to, her voice dwindled, a fleeting shadow crossing her features. To simpler days, Mr. Abernathy supplied, his tone gentler. He cradled the pie, turning toward Officer Miller. You know, son, this simple gift, it evokes a time when even the smallest kindness held immense power. He paused, his gaze momentarily lost in the past. Back during the war. Christmas Eve, bitter cold. We were hunkered down in some shelled-out building in France. Morale was subterranean, let's just say. We hadn't seen a proper meal in ages, forget any hint of holiday cheer. He inhaled deeply, the pie's aroma seeming to unlock the memory. Then, as if from nowhere, a girl appeared, couldn't have been older than 10. She'd somehow slipped through the lines, carrying a small woven basket. Inside, a few rock-hard biscuits and a solitary apple. Just one, officer. She offered it to our captain. He could have devoured it, I'm certain, but he painstakingly divided it, each of us receiving a sliver. Mr. Abernathy's eyes glistened. That minuscule piece of fruit, that single, selfless act, it sustained us. It reminded us what we were defending. It reminded us of hearth and home. His gaze locked onto Officer Miller, unwavering. Never discount the might of a small gesture, son. And never judge a man by his weathered facade. Officer Miller shifted, the weight of his assumptions suddenly a heavy burden. The bakery seemed to constrict, the pie's sweet scent now tainted by the acrid taste of his own prejudice. He cleared his throat roughly. I understand, sir. Thank you for sharing that. He straightened, a newfound respect coloring his demeanor. And I apologize for the misunderstanding, Mr. Abernathy. Have a good day. He turned to depart, then hesitated, almost imperceptibly. Merry Christmas, sir. Mr. Abernathy offered another smile, gentle and forgiving. Merry Christmas to you as well, officer. And stay safe out there. As Officer Miller exited, the bell overhead emitted a soft, melodic tinkle, as if amplifying Mr. Abernathy's parting words. The frigid air struck him, a stark contrast to the bakery's warmth and the poignancy of the story he'd just heard. He walked toward his cruiser, the image of Mr. Abernathy, the apple pie, and the young girl with the basket indelibly printed on his mind. He comprehended now that good policing extended beyond procedure and law enforcement. It encompassed understanding, empathy, and recognizing the inherent worth in every individual, regardless of circumstance or outward appearance. He cast one last glance at the bakery, a silent vow taking root within him. He would strive to be better. He had encountered a profound lesson, and a story he would never forget.